What a world, eh? Hello everyone and welcome back, a very warm welcome back I should say, to The Library is Open. So I hope you brought your library card, my darlings. Oh, whatever that was. First off, I want to start with an apology for not posting last week. I just needed to take a week, I think, for just to let things be, just to sort of manage my workload with stuff, and for this not to become ever a chore, because it's a pleasure to speak with you and to make these videos, so I always want that to be a pleasurable experience. Can we just appreciate this depth of this shot? Translation, she wanted to sit on the couch and couldn't be bothered moving, so we've decided to go with it as an angle. But yes, we are back, and a slight bit of reno that's gone on in the week that I was absent. So, in the past I've normally done sort of a combination of kind of tag videos and also, like, a spotlight on a particular book that I'm reading. I think for the foreseeable I'm going to do a new thing, which is not too dissimilar, but it's going to be more of like a sort of reading vlog, as it were, in terms of I'll be doing sort of overviews of a couple of books that I've read in the period since we've last spoken. It's really great English, isn't it, for a professional writer? But hey-ho, language is evolving, let's embrace it. So yeah, basically what that means is that I'll be sort of doing these reading vlogs, probably one a week, and I'll just be going over things that I've read, and there'll probably be several things, and, maybe they'll be themed, maybe they won't, but, I can chat about life then as well, and just sort of feedback to you the kind of variety of things that I'm reading, but without sort of, deep diving at the moment into one particular book. I may still do deep dives if and when it feels appropriate, or if and when there's a book that I think warrants its own video, but that's just as a sort of heads up. Other than that, now it's really changed. Still here, still got caveman weave, what does that even mean? Sorry, I've still got caveman hair, which I'm trying to tame desperately. You can see it escaping as we speak. Oh, I do have one nice thing. I've really gotten heavily into candles lately. I used to be really into candles, and then I sort of went off it for a bit, which is quite a faddy Gemini thing, I think. But this one spoke to me, and it's beautiful. It smells gorgeous. And look, it's called The Library. Isn't that gorgeous? It's and it's described as mahogany shelves, dusty pages, antique sandalwood. And it is a soy wax, obviously, so it's all vegan friendly, and it's from a company called Cosy Art, and I'll link them in the description. They're a small family business from what I understand, and they give really, really great customer service. There was like a mix-up in the mail with when I ordered the candle, and they just replaced it, no questions asked, with, really nice, quick email responses. So that's brilliant, and I think if we can support small business right now, that's really important. So I'm looking at like Etsy for my drag stuff at the moment, because if you're not aware, the vegan queens ladies of lockdown are back. So check them out, and just like booksellers and people that have like second-hand or used businesses are really great to support, because it's not only my ethos as like a vegan and like protect the planet person, PPPP. No, it's 3 Ps. Sorry. But it's also just a really great way to support people that are not being helped by the people in power. So, there we go. Yeah, so I hope you've all been well. My week's been... It's been really good, my couple of weeks, I should say. I'm back at work, pretty much full-time now, which is, a lot of my mental capacity is going into figuring out how to effectively deliver the teaching content that I would normally deliver face-to-face over Zoom, basically. And I think I'm getting there. I think I've got a high-quality kind of form of delivery, but it's just about making sure I have enough time to check in with myself and check in with my students constantly and make sure that they're feeling supported and so on and so forth, because despite what the media would have you believe, or people on Twitter, it's like teachers do care, and we're actually on the side of our students and their families, and we have our own mental health struggles and our own issues as well, so we are in this together. It's not an us and them situation, which is what the powers that be would have you believe, because they like to shift blame. So that's what I've been doing, and so my reading has been a little more spasmodic than normal. I've been listening to a lot more audiobooks and stuff like that. More on that in the coming vlogs. But yeah, shall we have a look at what I've been reading this past couple of weeks so far? Now, this is a truly mixed bag, so there's definitely not really a theme this week. If there is a theme, the theme is me. And, you know, in the interest of not being snobby, I've read quite widely and quite, you know, non-genre specific. Genre specific. That's a good drag name. Genre specific. Drag king, I should say. So the first one I read, which was recommended to me, is a strong phrase, but sort of I was egged on to buy this on New Year's Eve for like £1 second hand, and it's Martine McCutcheon's The Mistress. Now, if you've been on this channel for any amount of time, or even if you haven't, then you're probably aware that I'm not really a romance fiction reader. That's not because I don't think it's valid as fiction, or, you know, and it's not that I believe in the, you know, that horrible genre name chick lit, which just feels a little bit patronising, because, or fiction for women. I don't know what that means, other than to be, you know, slightly, as I say, patronising. But as a sort of laugh, I have to be honest, I bought this, The Mistress, by actor Martine McCutcheon, who, if you're from the UK, you will remember as Tiffany from EastEnders, and she was very high profile at the time of writing this, because she was doing My Fair Lady at the National Theatre, and so on and so forth. I think this was when it was written. And this is a kind of, I guess, what we would call bonkbuster, and I was looking for something light, and something a bit sort of off the beaten track of what I would normally read, so I went for this, and how can I say this? I enjoyed the experience while simultaneously finding it completely and utterly frustrating, if I can be honest. So yeah, this is what we would probably call what Jilly Cooper, you know, sort of popularised as like a bonkbuster. It's about a woman called Mandy who lives this sort of very high class, fashionable designer life. Shopping and bonking is probably what they used to call it in like the 90s, early noughties. And, you know, she works in PR and so on and so forth, so it's quite typical of that genre. She's beautiful, and it's her birthday. The only thing she doesn't have is her one true love. Anyway, she meets this guy in a restaurant on her birthday and can't stop thinking about him, and so on and so forth. Eventually they meet, but it turns out that he's actually married, so she becomes the mistress, despite the fact that her sister is currently going through a separation because her husband has acquired, that makes it sound blameless, has got a mistress as well, so she's kind of balancing these two things. Now, it's enjoyably frothy in the sense that you don't feel any sort of commitment whatsoever to the characters, which I suppose is a positive thing, but that's also the negative, because actually nobody in this novel is particularly likeable. Not even particularly likeable, none of them are likeable at all, really. She's got this cast of friends, which is very sort of Bridget Jones, Sex and the City-ish. You know, there's a gay one, there's one from another country, there's a hippie Earth mother kind of thing, and they all have their opinions, so I get why they're there narratively, but they're just not likeable, a single one of them. Neither are our main characters, you know. Mandy makes daft decisions and changes on a dime. The guy she's having the affair with is not particularly, I don't mean attractive in the sense that of looks or anything like that, but I mean in terms of his personality and the way he behaves. I'm like, why are you interested in this man? He's awful. So, yeah, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, really. And I don't mean to say that that's reflective of this genre, per se. But it just feels very archetypal and quite surface. And, like I say, it's interesting because I was thinking the sort of glamorous lifestyle that she discusses in the book is like, the more I read it, the more I was thinking, God, I'm really happy I don't have this life. You know, I mean, designer handbags and so on and so forth are all really lovely, but, and not in a judgmental way, it's also quite cold. And it's also quite surface, isn't it? You know, and I just left thinking, thank God this is not my life, you know. And again, I say that without judgment, because if that's what you want from life and it does ultimately fulfill you, then that's wonderful. But actually, it just left me kind of icy So it's interesting, and for a quid, I'm like, okay, but you know, it just sort of reaffirmed to me that I'm looking for something else. I think in the protagonists that I'm interested in. I'm not making a moral judgment on affairs or anything like that, or being a mistress, or there really should be another word for that's more gender non-specific. I feel, because I don't know. I feel like women always get. Or female identifying people always get the brunt of this as though they're at fault, whereas actually, you know, it takes two to tango. So, yeah, the conclusion is just a little bit baffling, if I'm perfectly honest, as well. But hey ho, you know, if that's your thing and you can buy into the ridiculousness of it and you don't get frustrated easily with characters, maybe this could be for you. But so I'm glad I read it, but I will absolutely be donating it on. I don't think it's going to become a classic reread. So contrary to that, back to a genre I am more familiar with, I've also been reading this, which was brilliant, I have to say. This is Russ Thomas's Firewatching, and I bought this last year because I was given to understand that it was, you know, sort of crime, contemporary crime, but with an LGBTQIA protagonist, or at least representation from the community, and yeah, that's true. So the story centers on DS Adam Tyler, who is a gay man, who is investigating a series of... well, no, he's not investigating a series of fires. What happens is a body is discovered bricked up in the walls of a house, and then it eventually becomes involved with this kind of firebug arson activity that's going on in and around the area. And then there's additional complications which I won't spoil in case you want to read it, because this is a definite recommend. And it's the first of a new series actually, which is lovely because oftentimes I find I plunge into like contemporary crime series or whatever and discover that I haven't been in on the ground floor. You know, so there's already a full series, I should say, which is great in some ways because it means you can binge read them if you want to. But actually, there's something really nice about getting in on book one, because the second one is out in, I think, April, and it's called Night Hawking, I believe. But things I love about this are it's very firmly set in the north, in Yorkshire, to be more specific, I should say, and that sort of is resonant throughout. It's police procedural, but with, you know, intriguing mix of characters. And, you know, I can't overestimate how... not interesting, what's the word? How pleasant it is to have a queer main character in the sort of lead detective role. I know it's not new, in the sense that, you know, Val McDermid did... a queer-led crime series. Countless other people have, but actually, to place them in the sort of crime thriller genre now, with, let me explain this, with our contemporary sort of understandings of queerness and so on and so forth, is you know, a treat. Have I explained that well? Because I don't mean to say that other people's books aren't equally as important and good. I really responded to it, and it was the sort of it was really good to see that integrated into the plot, so that it's not ignored, because how could it be? You know, but there are, you know, for instance, Adam becomes involved with one of the suspects, or someone who's embroiled in the case, I should say, because, you know, they have a romantic liaison, shall we say. But one of the reviews said what it does is really blend the best of the old, you know, from the sort of golden age of crime, with the best of the new. And I think that's a really great summing up of this. This feels like an old, new crime novel, or series, I should say, with a really compelling character with a lot of backstory. That I'm really, really looking forward to exploring more. It's just very well written. It feels almost like contemporary literature as well as crime, because I think there's a snobbery sometimes about like crime and romance, in that they can't be well written or to a literary standard, and I don't think that's true in the slightest. So yeah, I really enjoyed this an awful lot. It kept me turning the pages at night. It's a bedtime crime book with some really, really interesting characters, and you know, twists and turns that keep you guessing all the way to the end in the classic tradition. So this was brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to the second one. And finally, for, as I said, this truly mixed bag, this is a kind of work-related one because I'm working on a project that's kind of inspired by this at the moment. But I never read it, and it's so sort of infamous in some ways, and I think possibly unfairly so, because I think the infamy kind of takes over what's good about the novel. So this is Flowers in the Attic by Virginia Andrews, also known as V.C. Andrews, and this is about, if you're not familiar, it's also a mini-series, or not mini-series, a TV movie, and it centres on a family who their dad dies, and their mother is left sort of all but destitute because of like financial instability. So the four children are forced to appeal to, well, she and the four children are forced to appeal to their grandparents who they've been estranged from, and in doing so they go to live at the grandparents' house, and the mum sort of says, look, because my grandpa or her father never forgave me for something I did as a child, we're going to hide you in the attic until I've won back his trust so that I can be put back in the will, and then I'll be able to provide for us. Unfortunately, what happens is that the children become the titular flowers in the attic, and they're actually kept up there with a grandmother who spouts about sin and, you know, fire and brimstone and so on and so forth, and, you know, they are routinely abused and so on and so forth, and they're trying to sort of figure out what their mother did as she starts to become distant, and they start to come to the realisation that actually maybe what she says about keeping them up in the attic while she convinces her father to let them, you know, back into his life because he's on his deathbed, may not be true. So, you know, there's a lot of intrigue going on here. Now, the reason that this one is most famous is because it does contain themes of incest. More than once, I will say. But actually, what I do have to sort of shout out Virginia Andrews for in this, and her subsequent series, because there's 5 in total. I've watched the TV movies of the others, but I've just read this one. Is what I have to admire for is that it never feels gratuitous. You know, there's never the ew, ick, judgmental factor. This is not me advocating that it's a good practice or whatever. I'm not making a moral judgment at all. I'm just telling you what's in the book. You know, because this could so easily be cheap, pseudo-pornographic material, and it isn't that. It's actually a really interesting exploration of abuse and neglect, with some really quite harrowing moments in the scene with the mice will stay with you if you choose to read this, as will the sort of building of the kind of paper world in the attic. You know, it's a story where no one, as Sid Vicious famously said, no one is innocent. Or was it John Lydon? One of the two. And it's all the more interesting for that. Now, I'm probably not going to bother reading the rest of the series. I will just watch them in TV movie form. But what I do think is that actually, if you're looking for something a little bit challenging in some respects, but you're able to kind of maintain that distance from it and just read what's there, without, if that makes sense, then this could be a really interesting one. And as I say, because I'm working on it at the moment, it was kind of a must read because I needed to know what context I was talking to people about. But it was a much more enjoyable experience. I actually blitzed this in about a day and a half, which was just because I was on my work schedule, so I had to. But it was very compelling and page-turny, which is not to say that it's an easy read, as I say, but and it is quite literary in some respects. Not literary, but I mean, it's quite complex in some respects, and there's a lot of sort of information to retain, but I do think it pays dividends if you read to the end and then sort of form your own judgments about the plot and the characters therein. So lovely. So that's that, and that's basically what I've been reading for the last couple of weeks. I have since moved on, obviously, but that will then come in next time's reading vlog. In other news, the show that I wrote, the Storm Shepherd, which is my third collaboration with All Things Considered Theatre, is complete. I've completed the scripts for that and all the edits, so that's going to record. We're thinking now, because of COVID and so on and so forth, that it's going to be an interactive experience that's done online for a child and adult. You know, I don't say parent, because whatever that arrangement is for you is what that will be. So look out for updates on that, you know, sort of when the tickets go on sale or availability to watch goes online, but it will be an interactive experience whereby children and parents, or adults I should say, play an active role within it. And it's been tough, I'm not going to lie, but it's been very rewarding to sort of see something that I had an idea for well over a year ago kind of come to fruition with the lovely All Things Considered Theatre, with whom I'm an associate artist. So they're wonderful. You should check them out for lots of socially engaged performance practice. So that's it for this time. That was my reading vlog. I hope you've enjoyed it and hope you've enjoyed the slightly new format. It is very lovely to just sit here and talk to you and reflect. So do drop me a comment, do drop me a like and a subscribe if you haven't and you love, or if you haven't and you just like, or do neither of those things. That is absolutely fine. Alright, so let's put your library cards somewhere safe now, shall we? Somewhere waterproof as well, because we've had heavy snow and rain, which has been, you know, just perfect. And until next time on the library, when the library reopens, happy reading and take care of yourselves. Be safe. Much love. Mwah.